absolutely fervent support of getting rid of the IRS, changing this tax system, and empowering people who go out and work hard and want to do well for their families, then I want to charge you with the task of making sure that you leave no stone unturned through these next few days until we get every vote out there for Saxby Chambliss. And as I was saying before, try to convince people this is a very critical election, not just in Georgia, but for America. This seat could well determine the balance of the U.S. Senate as well as the direction of the fair tax. And I look at what's going on up in Minnesota. And you know, they got votes coming out of the graveyard and out of the laboratory. I call them Franken votes. I just can see them going to the Senate like this. There's nothing funny about Al Franken going to the U.S. Senate. But I'll tell you, there's certainly nothing funny about us losing the best voice we've got in the United States Senate for the fair tax, and that's why it's important to get Saxby reelected. And here's the deal. Try to convince your friends that this election matters to Georgia and to America. And get them to the polls. Don't let them stay home. If you have to go pick them up and drive them and carry them on your back and take a chair and if they have to stand in line, feed them, do whatever you got to do. But if you find some stubborn person who will not listen to you and will not come to his senses and support Saxby, then you have another job. Keep that person at home. Do not let them out of their house to go vote. They are a danger to Georgia and to America. This is simple. If they're voting for Saxby, you get them to the polls. If they're not, let the air out of their tires and don't let them out of their driveway. The headline tomorrow in the Atlanta Constitution-Journal will be, Huckabee comes to town and encourages vandalism. Well, you'll hear people say we can't get the fair tax passed. But I want to tell you something. When I hear people say in this country what we cannot do, I'm reminded of the guy who was sitting late one night at a little tavern, and he shouldn't have even been there, but he was. He stayed too late and drank too much. He looked at his watch and realized how much trouble he was going to be in when he got home. He said, man, I got to get out of here. He jumped up and he decided he'd take the shortcut. The only path he knew to get home quicker than normal was go through the cemetery between the tavern and his house. It was dark that night. That fellow was booking it through that cemetery. But it was so dark he didn't see that there was a freshly dug grave right in front of him. Poor guy tumbled over in the grave, fell right in it. He clawed, he climbed, he was doing everything he could to get out of the grave. He couldn't do it. He finally gave up. He decided he'd sit down over in the corner of the grave and wait till morning. Somebody would hear him and they'd pull him out of there. So he sat over in the corner and went to sleep. A few minutes later, same tavern. Another guy stayed too long, drank too much, looked at his watch, said, man, I'm in trouble when I get home. He jumped up out of there and like the guy before him, he took the shortcut through the cemetery. And like the guy before him, he didn't see that freshly dug grave because it was dark that night. And like that guy before him, he tumbled over in the grave. He too, he clawed, he climbed, he was doing everything he could to get out of that grave. He couldn't do it either. He was about ready to sit down over in the other corner of that grave and just sleep it off and wait until morning and somebody would come here and get him out. About that time, a hand reached forth and touched him on the shoulder. And a deep voice said, hey man, you can't get out of here. But he did.